One unexpected visit changes a life, opening the door to new relationships and secrets from the past. This is a story of change, vulnerability, and unexpected closeness. Welcome to the Echoes of the Past channel. Subscribe for more stories. Maggie had always valued solitude. Her tiny apartment in Brooklyn served as a refuge from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. She loved the silence and her routines, morning coffee with a view of the busy street, evening books under the soft light of a lamp. Interacting with neighbors was never on her priority list. She even avoided long conversations with the doorman. So when someone knocked loudly on her door late at night, she flinched. At this hour, no one ever came. She froze, hoping it was a mistake. But the knock came again. "Who's there?" she asked cautiously, not opening the door. "Sorry," a man's voice said, slightly out of breath. "Do you happen to have any sugar? I just moved in and all the stores are closed." Maggie hesitated. She didn't know who this person was or why he had decided to ask her. But there was no aggression in his voice, only a slight awkwardness and hope. Finally, deciding to open the door, she found a tall man in his 30s standing there, wearing a faded t-shirt with a paint stain on the shoulder and disheveled hair. In his hand was an empty cup, and on his face, a smile. "Sorry for the intrusion. I'm Liam. We're neighbors now," he said. Maggie looked at him skeptically. The situation was almost comically banal, like a scene from an old movie. But something about his friendly smile and tone made her relax a little. She went to the kitchen and, returning, handed him a small cup of sugar. "Thanks." He took it with visible relief. "You've saved me. I'm terribly disorganized. But sweet tea is sacred to me. I promise I'll return the sugar, though it might come in the form of cookies." She just shrugged, not knowing what to say. Liam stood at the door for a couple more seconds, as if waiting for her to continue the conversation. But Maggie only nodded and closed the door. That night she couldn't sleep. She couldn't shake off his smile. And the fact that someone had suddenly barged into her peaceful world made her feel oddly out of place. She was used to being alone, but why did it seem like something was missing from her life that evening? The next day, Maggie ran into Liam by the entrance. He was trying to drag a bulky painting into the elevator. The canvas was large, with abstract strokes in deep shades. Something about this painting was captivating. It felt like there was movement, a hidden meaning that couldn't be understood at first glance. "Want to help?" he asked with a smile, holding the painting in the air. Maggie sighed but still put her shoulder under it. She wasn't one to help strangers, but somehow, Liam had stopped being just a neighbor. The elevator jerked and they were pressed together. She could smell paint, coffee, and something else. Maybe fresh wood. "Are you an artist?" she asked as they exited the elevator and carried the painting to his door. "Kind of. I'm a restorer at a gallery, but I paint sometimes too." That answer intrigued her. Maggie had never met an artist in real life. She imagined his studio, full of paintings, brushes, and the messy chaos of creativity. When they placed the canvas in his apartment, she looked around curiously. The room smelled of oil and solvents. Pencils were scattered on the floor, and other works of art hung on the walls. There was a feeling that someone lived here whose soul was filled with colors and images. "You can stay for tea if you want," he offered, placing the painting against the wall. She wanted to refuse, but instead she heard herself say, "Why not?" Over the next few weeks, Maggie and Liam found themselves running into each other more often. These were small moments that didn't leave much of an impression, but slowly began to change their relationship. She lent him a hammer when his tools got lost among boxes, And he, in turn, brought her a few old books he found in the basement of his building. Each day brought something new, but most importantly, each day they grew a little closer. One day when Maggie came home from work, she discovered that her old toaster, which for some reason refused to work, had broken again. She was carrying a bag of groceries and, seeing Liam on the landing, couldn't help herself. "Liam, do you know how to fix this damn toaster?" she asked, laughing lightly. Liam looked up from his painting, which he had just started restoring, and stared at her in surprise. "A toaster? Oh yeah, I know exactly how to fix that. Let's go take a look." They walked to her apartment, and Liam, with his first try, took the toaster apart. Maggie watched in surprise as his hands expertly worked with the tools, exposing the inner workings of the old appliance. "I've always loved taking things apart and putting them back together," he explained, glancing at her with a smile. "I even fixed my first car myself." Maggie raised her eyebrows in surprise. She hadn't expected to hear such a story, especially from someone who seemed too carefree to be handy. She relaxed a little, watching his calm demeanor when it came to details that seemed too complicated to her. When the toaster finally worked, and he proudly handed it back to her, she couldn't help but laugh. "You're a real master, Liam," she said, placing bread in the freshly repaired device. They sat down at the table, and soon hot cheese sandwiches appeared. Liam shared stories about how he studied at art school, and how he tried to balance painting with his work as a restorer. Maggie talked about her memories of school, when she dreamed of becoming an architect, but realized her love for art wasn't strong enough to pursue a career in it. The evening passed easily, like old friends, and the conversation constantly shifted from one topic to another. Liam talked about his travels around the world, and Maggie, in turn, confessed that her dream was to visit Japan to see the autumn garden in Kyoto. They laughed, and something new began to grow between them, quietly but inevitably. Maggie felt how her world, which once seemed so enclosed, had become a little brighter, a little more layered. Liam was completely different from anyone she'd ever interacted with in her everyday life. He was genuine, with a carefree sense of freedom, and it intrigued her. "I never thought I'd talk so much with a neighbor," Maggie admitted, smiling. Liam looked at her with slight surprise, as if this was something incredible. "Why not? We live in the same building, right? It's not so bad getting to know each other a little better from time to time." She smiled, but something inside her suddenly fluttered. Why had she never thought about talking more with the people around her? Maybe her own world was too closed off, too isolated. And now, with Liam, she was beginning to feel that there was space for something more. They continued to spend time together, and each new conversation seemed to bring them closer. Morning coffees with him became routine, and their talks over lunch or dinner habit. She realized that of all the little things that had happened in her life over the past few weeks, it was their interaction that had become the most important. Liam had become someone she could share even the most mundane things with, someone who, despite his lightheartedness, could listen and understand her. Maggie even started to notice how her heart raced a little faster when she saw him. But that was strange. Her world had been so isolated from other people that she didn't know what to do with these new feelings. Maggie couldn't quite figure out what had changed in Liam's behavior. It was something invisible, barely noticeable, but still tangible. He had become less available, appeared less often in his apartment, even though it had seemed like he was always around before. These changes began to worry Maggie because she noticed that he often avoided conversations about personal matters, preferring to stay in the shadows of his solitude. This wasn't the Liam she had so easily and casually interacted with a few weeks ago. One evening, coming home late, she overheard Liam talking on the phone. He was standing by his door, unaware that she was coming back, and speaking to someone on the other end of the line. Maggie stopped, pretending not to notice him, but the conversation had already started. She felt awkward, but couldn't resist the urge to listen. "No, Mom, I'm not coming back. You know why," he said. His voice was tense, and there was a trace of fatigue in it. Maggie couldn't help but feel a strange sense of worry. He was talking as if this topic was something forbidden, painful. His words unsettled her. She didn't want to interfere in his conversation. But hearing this made her realize that Liam was hiding something important from her, something that clearly troubled him. Why was he avoiding talking about his past? Why did his conversations always revolve around superficial topics with no hints at anything deeper? When he noticed her, his face immediately darkened, and his gaze became cautious. He was silent for a few seconds, unsure of what to say. "Were you listening?" he asked, a bit tensely, but with a hint of hurt. Maggie felt guilty but still answered. "No, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but—" "You don't want to share this with me?" Liam looked into her eyes, and Maggie saw the hesitation in his expression. Finally, he spoke in a quieter voice. "I just don't want to talk about it yet. Not now." The moment between them was heavy with unsaid words. Maggie understood that, in his silence, he was revealing something important. He had a past that he wasn't ready to share with her. But despite this, she didn't want to push him. "Okay, I understand," she said gently. "But I just want you to know that I'm here, whenever you're ready to talk." Liam gave her a slight nod, though it was clear he still wasn't ready to share. Yet there was something in the way he looked at her that gave her hope. It was the first time he had let her in, just a little. Days passed, and Maggie continued to see Liam less and less. His presence, which once filled the air with an easy lightness, had now faded into the background. It was as if something invisible had pulled him away, and she was left wondering if that one conversation had changed everything. But then, on a quiet Saturday evening, she ran into him again by the elevator. He looked tired, and his face was pale, as if he hadn't slept well for days. Something about his posture felt different. He wasn't the carefree artist she had come to know. "Are you okay?" Maggie asked softly, unable to hide her concern. "You don't look like yourself." Liam met her gaze, and for a moment there was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. He seemed to hesitate before answering. "Not really," he admitted. "I've been thinking a lot lately." Maggie nodded, not pushing him for details. She understood that sometimes words could be heavy, too heavy to say out loud. "I'm here if you need someone to talk to," she said gently, though part of her wasn't sure what to expect from this offer. She wanted to be there for him, but it felt like there was still a barrier between them. He smiled faintly but didn't reply right away. They stood there in silence for a long time, and for the first time, Maggie felt how much distance had grown between them. "I think I need to sort out some things on my own," Liam finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I appreciate you asking, Maggie." She wanted to say more, to tell him that they could still figure things out together. But something in the way he spoke made her realize that, for now, the silence would have to be enough. Maggie didn't see Liam for weeks after that encounter. His absence felt heavy, and the apartment complex, which once felt like a cozy, quiet place, now seemed eerily empty. Maggie tried to keep herself busy, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him, wondering where he had gone, what he was doing, if he was okay. Then, one day, when she returned from work, she found a small envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a letter, written in Liam's familiar, slightly messy handwriting. "Dear Maggie, I don't know how to begin this letter. The truth is, I've been struggling with something for a long time, and I think I finally have to face it. I'm leaving. Not just this apartment, but this city too. I need to figure out who I really am and what I want from my life. I know you probably have a million questions, and I wish I could explain everything. But right now, I don't have the answers. I'm sorry if this seems sudden. I just didn't know how else to say goodbye. You've been an unexpected, bright part of my life, and I'll always be grateful for that. Take care, Maggie. You deserve someone who can give you all the answers you're looking for. Liam." Maggie sat down on the floor, the letter in her hands trembling slightly. She couldn't believe it. He was leaving. No goodbye, no closure, just a sudden departure. A wave of sadness washed over her. But there was something else too, something that was hard to put into words. Liam had been right about one thing. He had been an unexpected part of her life. And even though his goodbye had come without warning, it was a goodbye that had left an imprint on her soul. As the days went by, Maggie slowly began to accept his departure. She couldn't understand it all, but she realized that sometimes people come into our lives for a reason, even if that reason isn't immediately clear. And sometimes they leave just as unexpectedly. In the end, Maggie returned to her solitary life, but it wasn't quite the same as before. Her world, once small and closed off, had opened up, if only for a brief moment. And though Liam was no longer part of her daily life, his presence had left something behind, a reminder that sometimes the people we least expect to connect with are the ones who teach us the most about ourselves. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share your thoughts in the comments.